Hello and welcome to the session on banking innovation. Over the next 1 hour, we will discuss how innovation is reshaping the Indian banking sectors tomorrow. And in the course of this discussion, I am joined by banking stalwarts, and joining me now is Surendra Rosha, CEO India, HSBC. Thank you, Mr. Rosha, for joining us. Thank you so much. Mr. Rosha has spent his entire career so far at the British Bank. He took over the reins of HSBC's India business in 2018, and he is also a member of the Asia Pacific Executive Committee, underlying perhaps the importance of the Indian business to the bank. Mr. Rosha, welcome once again. We'll dive straight into the chat that we'll have with you. And my first question is really about, any discussion that we do will have the shadow of the pandemic, really. And we talk of ways businesses looking at building resilience and how the pandemic has helped. But for you, perhaps the process started much before COVID, right? Because you have been resizing your branch network, investing in digital for better service, partnering with fintech companies to develop new revenue streams. So, how has the pandemic really shifted any of these focus points or added to them?
Thank you for having me today, Suchetana. So, your question is very apt, and particularly as we come up to the 1-year anniversary of most of us moving to working from home, it has really accelerated our thinking around digitization and digital services, but equally about the resilience of our operations and how technology can enhance that. So to your point, the first couple of years that I was here in India in this role, the focus was very much on the front end servicing of our customers and allowing them to interact with the bank digitally much better. The philosophy really was that customers today don't compare any longer the mobile experience they would have with a bank like myself with one of my peers. They would compare the mobile experience they have with me versus other services that they experience in the mobile world, be it e-commerce, be it other technology-related services that they may draw on or consumer services that they draw on. So we really had to reorient our thinking towards that. And the pandemic has accelerated that process. So while we may have had a long-term roadmap of having to get this done, we certainly had to accelerate it because, for about 4 to 6 months, depending on which city you were in, customers accessing our branches were at an absolute minimum.
Yeah.
So activities around, wealth management, around insurance, around high touch sort of customer experience, which traditionally happened in a face-to-face environment, be it in the customer's residence or in our branches, that was not possible anymore. So we had to think about how we could enhance our digital tools to service those needs, because those needs still existed for our customers. Coming to the second point around resilience, this was particularly important because as we moved everybody, we as an organization in India, we have 39,000 employees. We were 98% work from home. So to give you a sense of, not just the physical move of laptops, etc., but the network, the resilience of operations,
Absolutely.
the backups that needed to be in place, and ensuring that ultimately there was no break in service either for our customers in India or where many parts of our India organization in the Global Operations Center, the Global Technology Center services our HSBC customers globally. There was no break for them as well. And that was a fantastic journey because actually we achieved 100% rate of service.
Yeah.
But it was not easy in setting it up. And that's where technology and our partnerships with a number of tech firms, with a number of providers in our supply chain really helped in enabling that.
Because data security also is of utmost concern while you move lock, stock, barrel to working from home.
Indeed. And, we've seen incidents of frauds going up, particularly
Yes.
those that are in the online world. And we've seen customers becoming more vulnerable as a result because there is a uneven landscape on security. So organizations that are large and able to invest in cybersecurity have done so. But organizations that may be smaller, that are in the supply chain of larger organizations or individuals may not have the same level of security. And therefore, it's incumbent on providers like us to educate our customers about what we are seeing as emerging threats. for them, and that's been part of sort of the focus as well over the last year.
Yeah, because we've been reading reports and we see that along with COVID, another pandemic that hit the world was the exponential rise of cyber attacks. So you have to ensure that data is safe and transactions are also confidential. What are the kind of technologies that you have developed to ensure both of these to protect yourself against cyber attacks?
So I think being a global organization, we benefit from that aspect to some extent, and therefore we are learning constantly from what's happening across the globe in our operations. Who are the threat actors? What are they doing? What are the technologies that can help us counter emerging threats? And we are deploying that very quickly across the network to ensure that we are secure. And particularly if you think about as we as an organization move more and more to the cloud and adopt the cloud as a technology, we need to ensure the same level of resilience remains.
Right.
So the focus has really been on not trying to develop things ourselves, but to work in partnership with the organizations in the tech sector who are far more capable of helping us develop these solutions. And therefore, we stick to our banking expertise and they bring the tech expertise and we work together on that. Yeah. And of course, with the regulator, so with the Reserve Bank in particular, there's been a lot of work on certain aspects of ensuring that cybersecurity is of the highest standard, including in the field of educating our top management. So all the banking staff at the senior levels across the sector in India have to go through a level of training which has been put in place to ensure that there is a sensitization for many of us who are on the wrong side of 50 and perhaps are not as in touch with emerging technologies and their impact.
There are two threads emerging out of your conversation here: collaboration with your collaborations, and the other, which you touched upon, about the ever-changing customer and how you're not only competing with your rivals in your sector, but with the entire ecosystem of people who are on mobile providing services through there. So what are the technologies that you have been harnessing to address this new customer? And how are you realigning your businesses to service this customer better?
Yeah, so I think the very core part of this journey has been data and analytics. So the use of data, and as a bank, you can imagine every bank has a lot of data on its customers that resides in our sort of database. Ultimately, our approach to that data has had to change, whereas we looked at it more from a risk control, KYC, AML perspective to now becoming how do we better serve our customers using the data that's available. So certainly a lot of investment in analytical tools, business intelligence tools to support us in that journey. We have looked to partner with certain fintechs in that space, certain larger technology firms in that space. Adoption of tokenization, for example, in our cards business, where we work closely with Google and Visa to get that done. This is an important space for, again, enabling security of our customers in the process. We look at blockchain technology. We are a large trade finance organization globally, and the use of blockchain use cases in trade finance is pretty compelling. So we are spending a lot of time in a consortium with other banks in that area. Obviously the payments landscape in India is highly evolved, and therefore again thinking about how you can apply tools on that to better serve corporate treasuries or SME customers, etc. But a lot of this again is in partnership with other firms, with fintechs, with larger technology firms, because our belief is that as a banking sector player, we best serve our customers if we try to bring that collaboration together on technology.
So through these collaborations, Mr. Rosha, what are the innovations of the future that you are looking forward to when you collaborate with the startups or fintechs, not only in India, but globally?
So look, I think, one clear area that I think while it has been impacted today by the pandemic, but, one has to think about in the future is the cross-border movement of money as an example. as international tourism comes back, people will travel across borders, and as emerging technologies like central bank digital currencies come into place. And I know that the Reserve Bank has started a conversation on this.
Yeah.
Could an international tourist visiting our country be able to use a digital currency, a digital rupee,
Right.
which would allow them better security to travel, to pay for services in India, etc., and also lower their cost of exchange and overall friction. So there are some very exciting technologies that perhaps will emerge in 2 to 3 years' time in terms of actual use. But equally, I think there are technologies today wherein we can think about how we can better serve or better protect our businesses. So again, going back to the pandemic and the impact it's had on certain groups of lending, which banks do, where traditionally perhaps we may have used a certain type of data points or scorecards or use judgment on the basis of cash flows, etc. Whether there are better ways to use data and harness the data that's in the public domain to make credit decisions better.
Exactly. Brings me to the exact next question that I had for you. Yeah. Which is, what are the kind of technologies that you can actually use to ensure? Because the entire piece for Indian banking sector has moved to retail now. That's where the growth of credit will be. So how can you use technology to ensure delinquencies there does not become bigger than the NPAs that we already have in the system?
Yeah, and I think therein we need to be thinking about, beyond sort of traditional data sources, right? So if we think of let's take SMEs as an example, and the use of GST data, and how do we look at e-way bills, so over and above sort of credit bureau data in the retail space. More work is being done around account aggregators. We are looking at opportunities wherein people have presented to us technologies using social media, data that's available in the social media space. Now, all this is very interesting, but before we adopt this, we have to pay attention to the issue of data privacy.
Yes.
Right, and how we can better use things like social media-based risk analytics or geospatial analytics to reduce fraud, or how we can better reach our customers to educate them, and so on and so forth. But before we do that, we need to have a clearer sort of approach towards data privacy, and that's something that, again, we are paying a lot of attention to in terms of which sources are something that we can use versus what we can't use. But I am particularly excited about transaction-based data that could be used to enhance lending practices.
Absolutely. You're the local global bank. That was the appeal that HSBC has always had, and you have a focus on MSMEs in India. So, what are the kind of help that you think that you can give to this sector, which is really the backbone of the Indian economy? And they've been very badly battered, first by the demonetization and now by the pandemic.
Yeah, indeed. Look, I mean, the government has also put in a lot of programs to support through guarantee schemes, etc. But we also believe that the SME sector in India is undergoing a phase of systemic formalization, and there's been an uplift in the context of governance regulation due to a combination of changes that have happened. Right. So SME financing has certainly improved. What we think is critical is the disabilities caused by the pandemic. We need to ensure that there is enough support through that period for these firms to survive and come back. And I actually think that, let's take manufacturing in the space of electronics as an example. With the production linked incentive schemes that are being put in place, as India starts to attract more manufacturing of electronic products to our shores, and this is manufacturing not just for the Indian market but for exports, we will see the SME ecosystem in that sector thrive, in our view, because they will come into the supply chain of these larger component manufacturers or larger end product manufacturers, and that will certainly support this sector in the future. We also think that as more manufacturing comes in, other services around those manufacturing clusters will benefit. So one has to think about, as greater formalization happens in the SME space, how are we supporting those that are deeply impacted through moratoriums and other steps being taken, and then enabling change in some of their business models to go into this, adjacent supply chains versus the industry they're in today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Rosha, for your time. It was great chatting with you. And as you very succinctly brought out, that the real challenge perhaps for the banking sector is to shift from conventional operational procedures and legacy systems to a customer centric approach where the customer is not only looking at you, but comparing you with every other service provider who's on the mobile. Thank you so much, Mr. Rosha. Hope you will be there with us as we interview Adhil, and then we move on to also interviewing the others on this panel. Thank you so much, sir, for joining.
Thank you.
We're still talking about banking innovation, and next up is Adhil Shetty, CEO and co-founder of bankbazaar.com. Welcome, Mr. Shetty, to this conversation. Thank you for taking the time out. Adhil was 28 when he founded Bank Bazaar, India's first neutral online marketplace for instant customized rate quotes on loans and credit cards. Your investment and saving advice, Adil, is so famous that while we're talking, we might just get flooded with questions about tips from you. But before we do that, and we've just heard Mr. Rosha talk about the collaborations that is happening in the banking space. So I'd like your take on that first. HSBC, a bank which is over 150 years old, you set up 12 years back. So how does this combination work, A, and B, the opportunities that you see in these collaborations in a post-pandemic world?
Yeah, absolutely, Suchetana. I think you picked up on the number one term in the market today, which is collaboration between banks and fintechs. I think there's been a clear understanding, right, that if we're going to reach millions and millions or tens and millions of new customers, it's going to happen via collaboration. Now, very clearly, right, the bank has key strengths. It's a regulated entity. Like you said, over 100 years of risk management experience. They know how to deal with compliance, build products for consumers. And you have fintechs, right, which have created large pools of engaged consumers. So let me give you Bank Bazaar as an example. Mm-hmm. We have about 50 million users who predominantly use us to keep track of their credit score and their credit history, and how not to get late on repayments and things like that. Now, this creates an opportunity wherein a fintech can bring the technology to play. Like, to give you a simple example, when COVID happened, April 1st, we couldn't do business, right? Because we couldn't meet you to pick up your KYC documents. But by May 1st, business was back on because video KYC was turned on. The RBI was very supportive with regulation, and people were taking loans and credit cards purely basis video KYC. But everyone walked the extra mile. The fintech walked the extra mile to educate its consumers. The bank walked the extra mile to say, I can't visit your house for a verification, but can I use some other databases consent, for example, the GPS locator on your phone, to do your contact point verification. So I think collaboration has really come to the fore. And today, right, no one asks us, are you competing with a bank? I think it's taken as a given, right, that the two fintechs and the banks are going to help each other grow the market.
Absolutely. And as Mr. Rosha of HSBC was also saying, that you don't compete against rivals in your own sector anymore. You're competing against anybody and everybody who has a digital service to provide. So how competitive is that? And what are the innovations to help you excel in such a competitive market?
Right. So, what Surendra said is absolutely right. I think everyone expects the one-click Amazon checkout. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter what products you're selling, right, or where you're selling it. The expectation is, everything is pre-filled. You need to consent. It's extremely secure from an InfoSec perspective. You can trust the brand and you can get the product. I think for us, it's all been about reducing the experience of getting a financial product, be it a credit card, be it a personal loan. I think it's happening in the industry for buy now, pay later. That entire experience needs to be one click, like it was in e-commerce. So to do that, right, is not a single step process. So there's a ton of additional work that happens in terms of credit underwriting. There's a lot of work which happens around risk verification. Now, how do we use technology better? How do we use data better? but deliver the same 10-second experience. I think fortunately for us, right, all stakeholders have been aligned in India. So the RBI said before COVID happened in Jan 2020 that you can do video KYC. You don't have to meet a consumer. The banks have been saying that if there is data available and the consumer is comfortable with sharing that data, why do I need to pick up 6 months bank statement from you? Why do I need to pick up 3 years income tax paperwork from you? Is there a way to digitize the entire process? And I think fintechs have played a key role, right, in building a highly engaged consumer experience. So it all comes down to delivering a 10-second e-commerce experience, but in shopping for a financial product.
Think here that we've been talking about, one aspect has been the customer, who is now accustomed to a different centricity and approach altogether. But this is the same customer who wants personalization, but is also extremely aware about data privacy. So what are the innovations, what are the kind of analytics that you use to ensure that you are giving this personalized service and you're also maintaining the privacy that is required, the confidentiality?
Right. So I think it just starts with entire infrastructure around info security. So I think Surendra spoke about it, but we see it as a constant work in progress. Like you said, Suchetana, since COVID started, right, attacks have doubled, right?
Yes.
You're constantly getting phished. And such precise phishing and whaling attacks, saying it's your boss saying do this, but it's actually someone who's phishing attacking you. So I think it starts with having an infosec practice, making sure that management is investing in it, having the right certifications in place. For example, at Bank Bazaar, we have PCI DSS, and it comes down to working with world-class partners like an IBM to secure your infrastructure. So you have to do it at 3 levels. I think personalization is about telling the consumer that they have the ability to control their data, and they can, basis consent, use that data to get their product instantly. So for example, right, like I said, we constantly keep advising consumers in terms of improving their credit score. So let's say that you've not paid back a bill in time. Let's say you missed an EMI payment. We send you a reminder saying, hey, watch out, this has happened. You need to take corrective action. Now, if the consumer is comfortable, right, can they work closely with Bank Bazaar and with the bank to be able to make use of this data to manage their credit history, to improve their credit score, and also access financial products instantly, right? I think it involves building the entire end-to-end experience around that.
Yeah. And in India, the main aim for most of the fintechs, including you, has been to simplify banking for the large masses. India, yes, before the Jan Dhan Yojana started, was largely unbanked. It has helped proliferated opening of bank accounts, maybe, but people are extremely scared still of banking through formal channels. How has the pandemic accelerated this process? You've always said that you want to go paperless, presenceless, and cashless. That's the future. So how has the pandemic helped this process?
Yeah, so I think the starting point is, while we've had a lot of banking accounts, right? Let's say 800 million banking accounts, we have been highly underpenetrated when it comes to access to credit, right? So maybe 3% of India has a credit card, right? A similar or smaller proportion has access to a home loan. Now, at the end of the day, right, we have a long way to go, and the market has to expand quickly if we're going to democratize finance. I think what fintechs and banks have done in COVID, right, is we've started a turbocharged engine. Now, this engine, right, is growing at a rapid CAGR. Now, it's starting from a smaller base, but it's growing very quickly. Now, we have line of sight, right, that 5 years from now, a vast majority of payments is going to be digital, right? Most of it is going to be mobile. Everyone is going to have either a credit or a debit card in order to complete the transaction. So I think a turbocharged engine has started. And what we're going to see over the next 5 or 10 years is something that very similar to what happened in China. The new consumer wants it mobile. The new consumer wants it instant. And the new consumer understands, right, what their rights are on their data. They know what consent means, but they want that one-click experience in a highly secure environment.
Right. I don't have a credit card. I am going to turn 40 in the next 2 years, and I don't have a credit card. So what are the kind of technology and innovations that you will use, not only to reach the ones who are unbanked, but people who in India, as you said, are extremely shy of going through a formal banking channel, even to take up a credit card? What are the innovations that you're going to use to
Yeah.
reach out to this mass?
Yeah. So Suchetna, right now there's about $100 billion US in credit card spends. I think what the pandemic has showed everyone, right, is this is today an essential, because you want an instrument which is not directly your bank account. You want that 45-day credit period, and a lot of people just want the benefits, right? So, for example, I always spend with my credit card because I literally get a free vacation every year because I've accumulated airline points on that credit card. Now I'm not taking a vacation.
Correct.
The points are
Get
still
accumulated, yes.
So I think what we need to do is make products accessible, Suchetna. I think the challenge we face today, right, is very few people are eligible and are able to take these products, right? So we need your employee pay slips. We need 6 months banking data. Sometimes you can only get it from the bank you bank with. But imagine, right, if we could make better use of data. So Surendra spoke about this. Can we make better use of transaction data via account aggregator? Can we make better use of MSME data? Can we make better use of credit history data? And can that, right, create an opportunity for innovative products which can reach a larger eligible pool? So in my mind, right, I think the challenge in India is the challenge of being able to underwrite a huge mass of people. Now we're able to give people a Jandan account, but can we underwrite you for a credit product? In most cases, it's no. And that's where technology, AI, ML, big data underwriting comes in, because we can get intelligence that can help us underwrite another 50 million or another 100 million people, because we're using data better and because we're going beyond, that printout of your bank statement or the printout of your income tax documents.
Right. One is, you're correct, improve underwriting. The other is also to create a certain amount of trust when it comes to taking credit. In India, the process is so complicated that most people stay away from it. I'll come to the last question, Adil, for you. That is, the pandemic, when we speak about it or we speak on any sector with the pandemic as the background, it's all about disruptions. While most companies talk about emerging stronger, but very few companies talk about expanding ESOPs, wage hikes, and promotions across all levels. What is the secret of your success?
Yeah, so at Bank Bazaar, I think we've been able to pull back fast. So we did a pay hike during the pandemic year. We also created a new ESOP pool because that's what's exciting. As we grow the company to something big, right, which can create shareholder value for employees. I think the key was just responding very, very quick to the pandemic. So Suchetna, I remember, when the lockdown started, end of March. So literally we were saying that, hey, here's a business that's going to double next year. Here's a business that's at break even. And suddenly, right, you're starting from zero. But I think what the team did, right, and credit to the entire team at Bank Bazaar, we always said, how do we fight back, right? We said, okay, video KYC was approved 3 months ago. How can we turn it on? On day zero, we were calling all our banking partners and saying that, hey, this technology is available. Can we turn it on? Can we use this alternative to doing a contact point verification? So I think there was a clear understanding that in the short term, this is very, very bad. But in the long term, right, if we act fast, if we move fast, if we work with our partners, get them to trust us and integrate with our video KYC, integrate with our paperless underwriting approval model, that we can build something big. So I think this constant belief helped us pull back such that today, right, we are better than our pre-pandemic levels. Yes, we lost a year, but we feel good going into next financial year.
Great, Adil. Thank you so much for chatting with us. May you continue to build something big, and may that get bigger with each year as you collaborate and help bank the large masses of India, moving them towards a formal economy. Thank you so much, Adil, for joining us today. Hope you stay on as we continue this conversation. Thank you so much.
Of course, yes.
We're talking about and chatting about banking innovation. And up next is Viswanath Ramaswamy, Vice President, Technology Leader, IBM Technology Sales, India and South Asia. Thank you so much, Mr. Ramaswamy, for joining us. A small introduction to Mr. Ramaswamy, who spent over 19 years in the industry, most of them at IBM. He has led across various hardware business across diverse clients and channels in India and South Asia. Welcome, Mr. Ramaswamy. Thank you for taking the time out. We've heard both Mr. Rosha and Adhil talk about collaboration. A 150-year-old institution talking about collaboration, and we also spoke to a 12-year-old company talking about collaboration. Do you think, as a theme, collaboration is the big opportunity in a post-pandemic world?
Yeah, first and foremost, thank you, Suchetana, for having me here. But to the point, collaboration, yes, is the next big buzz. Because as we see increasingly, as companies and clients are moving into the digital journey and transforming their digital models, irrespective of whichever businesses they are in, and especially in the banking ecosystem as well, collaboration becomes extremely critical, because it's just not competing with your own peers, but also facing a huge challenge with a lot of the shadow banks, could be NBFCs, could be payment banks, and also from some of the boundary players, as I would call it, like probably retail chains and telecoms and etc. So collaboration does have a great strength when you talk about fintechs and the banking ecosystem, or the older companies versus the new age companies as well.
Yes, Mr. Ramaswamy, we heard both Mr. Rosha and Adhil talk about technologies and innovation that they're looking forward to. You tell me, what are the key technologies that the banking sector should look forward to in 2021, a year where the pandemic we thought would be over, but the fear still looms large?
Right. So the Indian banking ecosystem has actually been on an aggressive digital journey over the last 5 years, Suchetana. And in fact, it's got further accelerated due to the pandemic. Actually, the pandemic has led to fundamentally three major shifts. One, I would say the dawn of the full-blown digital age. And that happens to be our new world order. And second, I would say evolution of a new, agile, cost-efficient business models, fundamentally built on the foundation of trust. They could be powered by technologies like cloud, AI, blockchain, and so on and so forth. And third is the emergence of the network economy, right? So the need of the hour is to adopt a real customized approach to address these organizational priorities across board, right? And from that standpoint, there are four key aspects to be considered from a digital standpoint when you look at it. We spoke about the collaboration. I did hear Mr. Surendra Rosha also talking about a lot of the digitization, and Adhil as well, right? The four key aspects would be, first is building an agile technology foundation. And when I mean by building an agile technology foundation, it would be focused on the core technology platforms, at the same time modernizing them. And second is actually pivoting to a platform bank model, right? Is where a lot of, and Mr. Surendra also mentioned about it, for MSMEs, for instance, the bank can play a kind of an advisor to the business expansion and facilitate their day-to-day operations or niche needs by adopting an MSME platform ecosystem approach, to the point what Adhil also really mentioned, or for a matter of fact that retail customers, lifestyle services can be bundled with the staple banking needs as well, like we have one which you have done with SBI, YONO, DBS, and so on and so forth. And the third one is reimagining the operating model. How can we infuse and embed a lot of the AI and analytics technologies into the process to scale automation and really build intelligent workflows? There were examples with Adhil and Surendra mentioned, like you get into a low touch or probably a no touch kind of an operation. Classical examples were video KYC or digital lending, digital trade finance, and so on and so forth, or for that matter, work from anywhere as well. And the last aspect is enterprise innovation. Banking ecosystem need to necessarily embed innovation in the DNA. And that's pretty critical as well.
Right. And, to the issue of innovation, cybersecurity is core. So therefore, what kind of cybersecurity strategy should systems and companies adopt? As
we go into the onslaught of the digital journey, right? And as banks and fintechs really transform this entire ecosystem into the digital transformation, cybersecurity is the pillar of the whole digital transformation. And as latest, according to the latest, the recent report which we saw of the 2021 X-Force Threat Intelligence Index, India was the second most attacked country in the Asia Pacific.
Right.
In fact, attacks on India made up almost 7% of all the attacks X-Force actually saw in 2020. Finance and insurance were the topmost attacked industry in India, followed by manufacturing, professional services, and all these roughly make up about 40% of the attacks, the ransomwares and so on and so forth, right? So a good technology partner helps make these systems robust and dependable. Banks should be looking at strengthening their cybersecurity posture through implementing technologies, processes, specifically around establishing what we call as a crisis command center with cross-functional members, having crisp incident responses, something like live simulation exercises, virtual cyber incident recording, and so on and so forth. In fact, in one of those, IBM has been pretty instrumental in evolving the threat landscape as well. We work with one of the small finance bank, Ujjivan Finance Bank, and they wanted to establish a holistic information security infrastructure. So the organization was looking at architecting what they call as a SOC, or the Security Operations Center, to respond, to recover, and learn from the incidents. And today we are able to build in a lot of intelligence into predicting well in advance of what the possible threats could be through our IBM security technologies as well.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy, for taking the time out. It's lovely chatting with you and with the others on this panel, Mr. Rosha, Adhil, and the others. So as we conclude this discussion, clearly the main pillars of the future would be agility, collaboration, reimagining operating model, innovation with security as the underlying thought. And that is what will perhaps make the modern banking ecosystem. Thank you so much, Mr. Ramaswamy. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Suchit.